All right, we're live. This is the finale of Bears Over Beers in the 2023 season. We made it. We
We
had a
did.
we had a long break at one point, around the bye week and kind of, had like a mega bye week for ourselves. But otherwise, we have been here when we have been talking about this teams, the ups and the downs, more like the downs and the ups, I guess, if
Yeah.
we're gonna be honest
We're
about the
gonna go
timeline.
chronologically. Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm Jeff Burkus. I'm a writer at Windy City Gridiron. And on the other side of the screen is EJ Snyder. He is a draft extraordinaire over at the Bootleg podcast. And we're going to talk a little bit about Bears. We're going to talk a little bit about the draft. And we're going to talk a little bit about movies at the end of this. That's kind of our fun one that we have to kind of wrap this up with. But on this show, we always start off with a drink. And I say a drink because I'm not exciting today. But what do you have to bring
It's
us today?
okay. I'm carrying your water. I am exciting today because I took your well, it was actually one of our listeners who commented on the tradition of ending one bottle with 2023 and getting a new bottle. And I told you I was out of new bottles. I didn't have any.
Yeah.
I remedied that situation. The office staff here at Bootleg, we don't have any office staff. I just have dogs. But they rallied up, they put their savings together, and they bought me something nice for Christmas, i.e., I bought myself something nice for Christmas. This
Red
is
breast.
Red Breast, but not any Red Breast. This is the single pot still Tawny Port Cask edition from the Iberian series. Not something you might find on your local shelf, but I really like Red Breast. One of my favorites. And saw this and thought, yep, I should do that. So I did that, but I'm gonna crack it open. This is a neck pour. There
Nice.
should be, and we'll see how it is because I've had the Lestau, I've had the 12, I believe I've had the 15, but I'm not sure. Love Redbreast, one of my favorite Irishes, and love Tawny Port. Like it's one of the few sort of I'll call it wine-based drinks that I can handle. My great grandmother used to drink it, and she sort of was the first one I ever knew that had a thing for it. And later in life, I was like, "Hey, that actually, I remember that. I should try that." And I found out that I actually liked good ones. So the fact that you're putting one of my favorite Irishes in, a Tawny Port cask and letting it hang out, I'm down. So we'll crack that open.
All right, so it is. I love it, and I definitely see you as the Irish whiskey guy that I know in my life. Although Brendan Chagru is now also making that case
You need more than one.
You need more than one, right? And I also see you as kind of a finished whiskey guy, and so this sort of really kind of sits in your lane pretty well. So
Yeah.
I am participating not in dry January because I can't go that far, but I am participating in what I'm referring to. Well, I had referred to it as dry-ish January, but there is apparently a movement of damp January. So we're going to go with damp January. And basically, the way that I interpret damp January is that I'm only going to drink on the weekends. So I've got whatever you got to draw some lines. So I've got a little not even a mocktail because there's no sugar because I don't do sugar. So it's lemon juice.
I've got water and it's flavored.
It's so sad. It's lemon juice. It's Angostura bitters, and it's which I know has a little bit of alcohol, but come on, give me a break. And it's it's a carbonated water. It's
a fancy carbonated water, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I just think it's funny because there's a whole coalition of people out there that really don't like the word damp. Like,
well, it's not the word moist.
Well, damp and moist and slacks are three of the ones I know. And when you put them all together, I can totally understand.
Slacks. Oh yeah, those three together.
Those three together, very, very
makes
bad.
Anybody uncomfortable.
Damp January. All right. Well, as is tradition, I'll do the first little bit straight so I can see it, taste it, smell it while it's warm, and then I'll put it over ice because that's the way that I prefer most of my whiskeys. But right off the crack, yeah, Tawny Port is not hanging out in the background. It is. The nose of that bottle is you just opened a bottle of Tawny Port.
Lenny 1991 is commenting. 1991, is that when you were born? Are you old enough to drink? Yes, you're old enough to drink. Says the show is called Bears Over Beers, and like
It is.
we
It's
know,
it's true, but
but
this
the
is the
show
last one,
transformed.
Lenny. Like this is the last one for the season, and this is what season 4,
5.
season 5.
The
Yeah.
show also transformed over that losing streak and just drove me to hard liquor. So that's that's that story. Okay. All right. Let's get into this thing. We've got some questions for those of you that are joining us live. Feel free to throw those in. We'll try to mix in if we can. But our guy, Opinionsaurus at Eric Bono on the Twitter machine says, curious to see how this changes before digging into more film, but any early draft crushes that would be a good team fit for the Bears. So you have dug in a little bit on your film work, and so there's probably a couple guys that you'd like to talk about. So the floor is yours.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you see people, caveat film work is not anywhere near complete. So these are all just folks that I either saw last year who went back to school or have seen in work throughout this year that just catch your eye when you've been doing this. This is now year 11 or 12 for me. I think it might be 12. You get to know what you like, and you see certain traits in certain players, and they stick out. Just in terms of groupings, which again we've talked about, line up very well for the Bears. It's a very strong tackle class, which I don't think the Bears need so much. It's an extremely strong wide receiver class, like historically strong. And I know that sounds like a broken record. We've said that the last two have been very strong. They have. We've seen playmakers come out of both of those and contribute immediately on multiple teams throughout the leagues. This one is better. Like there's just no other way to put it. This one is better. It is deeper. There is more talent at the top. You've got everything you need. You got a potential superstar, right up high with MHJ, Marvin Harrison Jr. And there are going to be receivers available at every level because of that, because you can't pick them all in the first round. It's just too many. I don't care if record number, I don't care if 7 go in the first round. There's still going to be 10 behind them that you can get in round 2 and round 3 and round 4. So a lot of wide receivers. I had mentioned Jacob Cowing from Arizona on this podcast earlier. He's a favorite. I really like a lot of the guys at the top that the Bears will be looking at potentially, depending on how things shake out. Rome Odunze had a great game in the national championship semifinal the other night. He's had a great season, broke all the Washington receiving records this year, over 1,500 yards in college. He was the guy on the other end of a lot of Michael Penix passes. But he's not the only one. I could talk for this entire hour about just the receiver class and not be done. So lots of great names there. You're going to see them at the Senior Bowl. You're going to see them at the Shrine Bowl. You're going to see them at the Combine. Lots of talk about them. Tight end class is sneaky good. Brock Bowers is an absolute draft crush, has been since last year. Bears are likely not in play for him. I would love it if they were. He is a difference maker at the tight end position in a way that very few players are. I don't see him ending up in Chicago. If he does, I was going to say I'll do a backflip, but I'll break my neck and that won't be good. So I'll just jump up and down, do a little bit of a jig if Brock Bowers gets anywhere near the Bears, because he's a tremendous player. On defense, Jerzon Newton, who a lot, Johnny, known as Johnny, who plays at Illinois, best probably 3 tech in this draft. Flashes a lot of power. Great hand usage, going to be that guy out of this class that is the really good interior rusher. Brings a lot of pressure on the inside of the pocket. Quarterbacks hate that stuff. Kobe Turner's a guy we talked about last year. He's having a great season with the Rams. I would say Jerzon Newton's even better than Kobe coming out. And Kobe, I think, is 4th among all rookies, regardless of position and pressure. So, Johnny or Jerzon Newton's going to have a great year. Tavondre Sweat, big guy out of Texas, defensive tackle. Now he is a guy I think could end up on the Bears, and I would be thrilled with that. Saw him live versus Kansas this year down in Texas. Just a wrecker. They've got a couple. Byron Murphy's the other one. He's the one that scored a touchdown, strangely enough. Yes, I did say a defensive tackle scored a touchdown in the Texas-Washington game, but Byron Murphy's also going to get that tandem's going to get a lot of attention. And either one of them could end up at Chicago, and I wouldn't be sorry about that. Edges, Latu from UCLA is my clear favorite. He's, some teams are going to feel not great about his injury history, but there's no way to look at his numbers and feel anything but great. He pretty much doubled most of the other contenders in the edge category and any metric you want. Really, really good player. Braylon Trice from Washington also had a very good semifinal game the other night. He's great as well. I think he led all edge defenders in pressures. Off-ball linebackers, typically ILB, haven't really got into that list. There's a couple of good ones. Really like Cedric Gray out of UNC. I think he accepted a Senior Bowl invite, so you'll see him there. There's a bunch of other players. I just haven't looked at a lot of them. Cornerback, or I'll just say defensive back, because we are moving towards that positionless thing where, Kyler Gordon, is he a nickel? Is he an outside corner? He's not. He's just a defensive back. And there's a lot of those in this draft as well. And a lot of good ones. There's a lot of, I don't know if there's a lot of great, center field safeties. A lot of people are going to be looking at that position if Eddie Jackson moves on for the Bears. There are some, but I don't know if the depth is there. But if you want like corners of all sizes and flavors, and I do mean all sizes, there's a bunch of size in the outside corner class, which is always nice. Teams love that. Not a bad draft either. So it's going to be fun. A lot of film to go. I know a lot of people want my running back takes because I love running backs.
You save those. That's dessert.
I do. It's dessert, but I can't help. There's 3 or 4 that I'm going to be seeing at the Shrine Bowl that I'm pretty excited about. One of them is big play Ray Davis from Kentucky is committed to the Shrine Bowl, and I can't wait to see him. I think he is going to be a very productive NFL back. He's going to be available in the mid rounds. I don't think he's going to go high just because of positional value, but ton of fun to watch. And there's many others, but gonna be talking a lot about all of those guys. And then the quarterback class this year, very, very deep, even with a bunch of guys going back. And the reason that a bunch of guys went back is because they looked at this class and went, I don't want to be the 9th prospect. I would rather try and be the 5th prospect next year. It's a lot better for me and my future salary wise. Even with those guys going back, we just had Cam Ward from Washington State, formerly of Washington State, declare for the draft this year a couple of days ago. He's committed to the Shrine Bowl as well. Going to get to see him. So even that second tier or tier and a half, when you get past all the big names that you're going to hear over and over again, Caleb Williams, Drake May, and Jaden Daniels, even after you get past the Bo Nixes of the world and Michael Penix, like there's guys like Cam Ward who are intriguing. I don't think I want to be forcing them into a starting role as a rookie. If your team's doing that, you're in a not great position, but they are interesting players. And there's a lot of depth. It's not the quarterback draft from a couple of years ago where we were like, I don't know if anybody's going to get drafted in the first round. This is not that draft. There are going to be multiple guys drafted in the first round and in rounds 2 and probably in round 3 as well.
All right, I don't have any crushes. I'm pretty sure that question was for EJ. So,
you have center crutches. I've been sending you center crutches. I know you're crushing on a center.
I haven't crushed yet. I haven't.
Okay. All right.
You
will.
I'm starting to evaluate, but eventually I'll land on a center that I like. So, the centers have been, a recurring theme on this show. So it wouldn't be Bears Over Bears if we didn't talk about centers more than any other show out there, right? That's kind of the deal. I think this one's quick, but Oak Lightning at Oak Lightning 1 says, assuming you don't keep Fields, how big of a chance is there that Poles does trade back but picks a quarterback, Penix, Nix, or any other quarterback that's not Caleb or May? I mean, I think that it's 0-0, right? Like I just don't. So this question is assuming that you're trading Justin Fields away, and you're trading down from 1 to try to do both things. So now you're putting yourself in a position where you don't have a quarterback, and you've traded away the right to draft one of these 2 prospects that everybody kind of loves. I don't see that as. I've seen it floated out on Twitter. That's why I put it up here, because there's people that are like, well, why not do this? And because look at all these quarterbacks that didn't go 1 overall, and they're all really successful. So why not just play the numbers? And I think it's an insane approach, and I don't think it's going to happen.
There is a path to that happening, and as you said, it's very narrow. Like it is this is the Dumb and Dumber. So you're saying there's a chance. Yeah, there's a chance, but it's razor thin, because every time you trade back and don't take a quarterback, and the holy grail that I've seen floated on Twitter about this approach is that Poles does exactly what he tried to do last year was going to do if the Texans hadn't backed out. And he's going to trade 1 to 2 and 2 to 3, basically, or in that case, 1 to 2 and 2 to 4 or whatever. This year, it would be just that. He'd trade down to 2, and then he would trade the right to trade, to take Drake May at 2, and then he would presumably have a pick where he could go get a player like Jaden Daniels. If you're going to do that, you don't have to be like 100% sure your guy's going to hit, which is not a certainty with any player. I don't care where you draft them. You have to be like 1,000% sure, because if either of those guys that you had the opportunity to take, the odds are one of them will work out. I mean, if you're just looking at straight up numbers, which is the approach you're talking about with like, oh, numbers say, like, if you're just looking at numbers, one of those two guys is going to hit, is going to be good. And they both might be. It's not likely, but it's possible. If that happens, you're completely screwed. No matter how your guy does, your guy has to outperform both of those guys, no matter the picks, no matter, like, if your guy is middling, if you trade back twice and take anybody, let's just say it's Jaden Daniels, and he is an average NFL quarterback, that would be a great result, because drafting a quarterback's not a sure thing. But if May or Williams turns out to be a great quarterback, you're probably getting fired.
I think it's an insane approach, but I think that what's happening is that people are thinking about the pick and thinking that all drafts are created equal. And there's a reason why these evaluations are then compared against evaluations of the past, right? So when you hear people say this quarterback's the best prospect since Andrew Luck, or this quarterback's the best prospect since, they're taking their you just said it at the top of the show. You've done this for 11, 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
You have a body of work. Maybe the first year wasn't, as full as this last year, right? Yeah, exactly.
Was not. Let's be clear.
So maybe you have a body of work of like 7, 8, 9 years, so you feel really good about. And you could go back and look. Some of these guys have been around a really long time. They've been in the league. And so when they make these statements, that's because they did scout these guys in the past. They did scout Andrew Luck, right? There's some of these guys, when they say, hey, Andrew Luck's the best prospect since Peyton Manning or John Elway, like, those guys can actually say that because they scouted all of them, right? And so not every 101 pick is the same.
No.
And this happens to be, I think this is why I was so obsessed with this Carolina pick situation all year.
I'm glad you used that word, because that's appropriate for your approach this year.
It was. And I think the reason why was because even if the Bears didn't want to use that pick on a quarterback, if things went great for Justin Fields and he proved that he was the guy and that's the direction to go, and I'm not making a statement of what they're going to do. I'm just saying, like, even if there was no question, that pick would be more valuable to trade than it would be in an average year or a normal. I mean, think about 2 years ago where the top quarterback was Kenny Pickett and he went, in the teens or whatever, whenever he was drafted. That number one pick was not worth nearly as much as the number one pick is this year. The same thing with, the year that Luck came out. Obviously the Colts were going to, they suck for Luck. That was the whole thing, right? Like they had, there was a whole brand of teams that
bad
were
for 1 year, and
everybody knew that was who was going to be number
basically one. Hall of Fame quarterbacking.
Right. Until Ryan Grigson ruined it.
Grigson, yeah.
But that's the caliber that we're talking now. Could they not fulfill that lofty expectation?
Sure,
absolutely. Of course, there's risk everywhere. There's risk with Justin Fields. There's risk with Patrick Mahomes the rest of his career, right? Like, he could get hurt and he could not be Patrick Mahomes for the rest of his career, right? There's risk in any quarterback, but there's certainly risk in keeping Justin Fields. There's certainly risk in taking Drake May over Caleb Williams or Caleb Williams over Drake May, whatever. We don't know the answers to those things yet, but these are the caliber of prospect that you talk about in these classes where it's no doubter. These are the guys that are 101 and you are really happy that you're in those positions because they can change franchises. It's just it's a really cool, lucky year that the Bears have the first pick.
It's tremendously interesting. We're going to be talking about it endlessly. Like, literally, I met with 2 people on Monday to get all my ducks in a row about this situation from top to bottom. Fields, coaching, head coaching, coordinator level, draft value. We went through everything, spent an hour and a half with each one of them because I know that my life is going to be consumed with this question for the next 4 months. I'm going to talk about this probably literally 50 times between now and the draft on podcasts, on radio, on my own shows. Like, this is going to dominate. If you don't believe me, there have been 5 national stories in the last 48 hours on this. And
Solex is good.
Solex is great. They're all good. Like, I appreciate all of the conversation, but like, if you think that volume is going to go down, we're not even through the playoffs yet. We're not done with the season. It's been 3 days since the Bears secured the number 1 pick, and we've had 5 national stories that I saw, which probably means there's 10 in 2 days, in 48 hours since, we got done with New Year's Day. Like, it is going to be a lot. Like, the volume, this one goes to 11, screw that. This one goes to like 12, 13, 14, just break the dial off right now. It's like Chicago owns the offseason. We're going to hear about it a lot. You will hear every opinion and you will get real tired of it at some point, guaranteed, because it is going to be endless, like literally endless.
So don't burn yourself out tonight on this debate, I guess is what we're saying. So we'll move on to a different question. I like this question a lot. This is from Edward. He's at Omega Jolteon on the Twitter machine. He's had a few good questions in the past. And did we discover that was a Pokemon kind of?
I think so.
Okay.
Sorry, not a Pokemon guy.
I'm not either. So apologies for messing that up if I did. But he says, rank the defensive picks from the last 2 rookie draft classes who have gotten significant snaps that you are most excited about in the future. So that's Gordon Brisker, Dexter Pickens, Terrell Smith, and Tyreek
Stevenson. Yeah.
He abbreviated it by saying Reek. So I saw that and I was like, wait, what?
We got Reek Woolen?
Tyreek. Got it. Yeah, I was like, whoa.
No, I mean, honestly, Tyreek Stevenson's played better than Reek Woolen for the last, I would say, 4 or 5 weeks, which, again, with as well as Tyreek Woolen played as a rookie, I wouldn't have thought I was going to say. But I love this question. Thanks for sending it. I think it's really good. I think my order goes something like, boy, interior defenders that get pressure are really sexy. Like, they're really worthwhile.
Dexter's number 1.
Yeah, I actually think it's Gordon or Tyreek Stevenson. And I think Gordon for his versatility. And I really do think they're kind of tied, because Tyreek Stevenson, if you'd asked me this question 6 weeks ago, Tyreek Stevenson would have been like 4th. He's really come on. The light has come on for him. The game started to slow down. He started to make the plays that everybody that loved that pick really hoped he would. He is starting to deliver on all the promise, the size, the ability to play press man, his ability to get his hands on the ball, which has really been the sort of difference in the last 5-6 weeks. Gordon, I was a huge fan of. He's continued to get better. Again, with we said this last year, don't move him around, pick a spot, let him learn it. Like, they moved him around endlessly last year, just like offensive linemen were like, pick a spot, let him learn it. Nope, they don't do that. So they didn't do that. They sort of impeded his growth as a rookie. But for the most part, he's been playing nickel because, again, they have more options, largely because they drafted Tyreek and Terrell Smith. So they haven't needed to. And he's really excelled. All the traits that we thought were great have showed up: playmaking, flexibility, smarts, obviously explosive athleticism. So those 2 guys, I would say Reek is definitely an outside guy. Gordon can be either, but right now he's solid at nickel, and I think that's great. And then, like, right behind him at 1A is Javon Dexter. Like, he has had a tremendous rookie season, and he's, honestly, if I kind of have to pick one guy to carry out of all these, like if it was a dynasty league draft and I had to pick one of these guys, I would probably pick Javon Dexter, because I think that's harder to get. A guy that can consistently get interior pressure. Like I said, there's a lot of defensive backs in this class. There's 1, Johnny Newton. Like, it's just more difficult to find. In terms of their play right now, like, again, 1A has got to be Javon Dexter for me. He's been great. And then I would say Brisker comes in after that because when he's in, the highlights are pretty high. He's struggled with injuries. I'm not sure whether that's going to level out or not. He's definitely provided a bunch of impact plays, but the consistency, which I'm really looking for from a safety, because you get burned as a safety, it's a big play. So nothing against Brisker. I like him as a player. I like the pick. He just, he's got to level that out a little bit. And some of that's just luck with injuries. And then Smith is really valuable. He, I think, is a very good third outside corner, and that is a thing you need in this league because your outside corners are going to miss starts in a 17-game season. And as a rookie, he's played way better. I got to see him in person, and he's exceeded just about every expectation I had for him. He's shown much better lateral agility. He always had size and speed in a straight line, but he's really started to develop, and he's made more plays. And then Pickens was not my favorite pick at the time. It's not that he's worthless or terrible. It's that out of this group, he comes in last for me.
I think I'm with you on. So 6 would be Pickens, 5th would be Terrell Smith. I think that's pretty obvious, and I think I would put Brisker 4th. I agree with you to that point. And then I think the top 3, I think you could shuffle them. And
it's 1 and 1A. It's like two guys tied at 1 and 1A. It's hard. That seems like a complete cop out. But the bottom line is, Poles picks performing at that level that we're having that discussion is great.
All second rounders, right? I mean,
they're great.
Like you say, if Brisker leveled out the performance, he'd be right there. But those are all second rounders, so that would be great. I think for me, it's probably Dexter 1. I like Tyreek Stevenson. He hasn't maybe shown it as like the light bulb's on. I would love to just draw a straight line and say this is
100%
going to be great. I also I'm just curious if this is a little bit of a league needs to adjust, because the light bulb went on and they're slow to adjust to that, and maybe they need to figure out where to go with the ball. I don't know where you go to the ball though. If you re-sign Jalen
Johnson, the point.
Where you go with the ball, right?
I remember talking with Bill about this last year. He was like, defense at the top of the draft, and I'm like, that's where they saw the value. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I do like the picks. I did like Gordon and Brisker, and they're going to have a year worth of experience. They do coming into this year. They stabilize positions. It'd be great if Brisker had not missed a start. I'm not going to say that's his fault. Like, injuries happen. It's great that Gordon has played. Gordon missed some starts too, but he's definitely stabilized as the nickelback. He has a bunch of experience. And then you pick 2 more corners who also work out, and you're adding those to Jalen and Eddie. Like, talk about the secondary 2 years ago, like who they were starting in like week 10 or 12, and then look at the options they have now in a passing driven league. That's not a bad thing. Like, it right now, loaded secondary. They are loaded with depth.
And
use some more help at safety, but like, other than that, they are good.
Yeah, you know how much I love corners. You know how much I love an agent of chaos, which I always sort of thought was like the safety that you move around. But it does seem like Gordon has been more of the agent of chaos, and so that's a lot of fun. And he's super athletic. So again, I could go any ranking with Dexter, Gordon, and Tyreek Stevenson maybe at this point, but like, I think I would say Dexter. I think I'd list it that way. Because interior pressure is, I just think, so important.
It's hard to replicate,
and it's hard to find. And if he can be that dude, that's amazing. So, all right, quick.
Eric Bono says, anybody miss Builder Shelley? And I'm like, that's what I was referring to, but I was trying to be nice.
Right, absolutely. So we're going to take a quick break. On the other side of this, we're going to get into a couple more questions as we enter the second half of the season finale. Stick with us. All right, EJ, I saw a comment here, and it said, this is from DBB, and he says, is the bootleg guy always on this show?
Yeah, that freaking bootleg guy.
Bootleg guy. Is he
guy's just moonlighting? Show? What a goofball, that bootleg guy. I hate that guy.
Well, I thought it was more of a positive. Like, DBB is going to continue to tune in because this bootleg guy is on this show. Do you want to tell him the history of bootleg versus Bears over Beers?
Yeah, absolutely. Bears over beers is first. So let's see. Podcasting history. Always wanted to start a podcast. Tried 3 times before I started my first one. Like, did full run-ups, like, always knew that I needed another voice in my podcast, that I was not gonna be a solo podcaster. Some people are very good at that. I'm not. Like, clearly just know thyself. Not good. So, fast forward, all those things bombed out, was just waiting for the right opportunity. Parent company wanted more podcasts on this channel. Our lovely editor-in-chief, Lester Wilfong Jr., said, "Hey, they're looking for podcasters." I said, I wanted to start a podcast, but I'm not going to do it by myself. He said, "That's funny. I just had that conversation with one of our other contributors, Jeff Burkus. You two should talk." And I was like, okay. So Jeff and I had a conversation. It was obviously a very fruitful conversation. We both had many similar ideas. We had both done a lot of similar preparation. We both felt similarly that we needed two voices on the podcast. And I said, I think we could do this. Like, let's get together and put an idea together for a show. That came together really quickly. We went back to Lester and said, good call, boss. You're right. We think we could do this. We're willing to do it. What do we get? And they said, get
your own show.
You get to deliver a fully canned show with ad breaks, and that's what you get. And so we learned pretty much everything about podcasting. Both of us. We did edit. We figured out how to edit, how to record. Didn't start with video, it was audio. And that became Bears Over Beers 5 years ago now, which is kind of crazy. Learned all those lessons, continued to write draft stuff for Windy City. And then I still remember I was working my other job and Lester called me one day. Lester never called me. I was email me or text me. And he called me one day and he said, "Hey," and I was like, "What's up, boss?" And he said, "Do you want to go to the Senior Bowl?" And I was like, as a draft guy, that's the Willy Wonka golden ticket. You were like, hell yeah. I would love to get let in the gate to go see all the players that I've been writing about for years and years. And he said, we can get you a pass. You'll have to foot your own way down there, but like we can get you in. We can get you credentials. And I was like, yes, hell yes. Like, let's do it. So I put out a call on Twitter and said, "Hey, I'm going to the Senior Bowl for the first time. Who's going to be there?" I knew a lot of folks in draft circles at that point. I just wanted to see if they're going to be there and I could meet them in real life. And one of the guys that responded was Brett Coleman. And I've told this story many times, so this is not talking out of school. I had not watched Brett's stuff before that. I knew who he was, but I had never watched a Brett Coleman video before I met him. And how I knew that was a thing, when I mentioned to some people, they lost their mind. They're like, "What? You're going to meet Brett Coleman?" And I was like, "Yeah, like, I guess. We just said we were going to get together and, have a meal or something." And they were like, "Oh my God, you have to tell him my name." And I was like, "Okay, Brett's a deal." So we went down and Brett was new as well. He hadn't been either. It was his first Senior Bowl too. So neither one of us knew what we were doing. And he came in, said, "I just landed. Are you hungry?" It was middle of the afternoon. We went out to a barbecue place that was completely empty. We were the only people in there. It was like 2 p.m. It had been recommended by a bunch of coaches. So we trusted that because they were offensive line coaches. We were like, if they like the barbecue place, that's good. It was great.
I mean, they're not the pickiest eaters in the world.
No, but
they're going to be a good portion.
It'll be solid. And, probably the service will be decent too. And it was. And we spent about 2.5 hours over a sort of sampler platter of barbecue. And then we were like, oh crap, the opening sort of, press conference thing is going on. Jalen Hurts was one of the featured players at that press conference. So we ran off to cover that. And then when we got out of there, he was like, "Well, what are you doing tomorrow?" "It's weigh-ins." And I was like, "Well, I'll be there." He said, "I'm going to be about an hour late." And after that, there was some player availability and he had all of his stuff and he was like, "Let's interview some players." And I was like, okay, I was going to talk to him anyways and like write notes down, but he's like, "Let's interview him on camera." And I was like, okay. And the first 2 guys that we interviewed were Adam Troutman, who is a tight end currently with Denver playing for Sean Payton. He was a Dayton guy, went to Dayton for engineering, but like grew a bunch and was a former quarterback, turned into a really good tight end. And then the defensive back from Pitt who plays for the Bills, their third corner. Well, like fourth corner at this point. But anyways, I loved him. And I said, we need to talk to him because I'd watched his game versus Virginia and he was just a dog. And so those are the first two guys. And we talked and kind of were inseparable for the rest of the week. And he introduced me to a bunch of people that he knew. I introduced him to a bunch of people that I knew. And by Thursday, he said, we're going to do this. And I said, do what? And he said, well, I want to start a podcast, kind of like the conversation you and I had, but I don't know anything about podcasting and we're going to put it on YouTube and you don't know anything about video. So I'll do the video side. You do all the podcasting stuff and we'll make it happen. And I was like, okay, but don't say that if you're not serious. And cause I'll be at your house in 2 weeks and we'll get a big whiteboard out and we'll make this happen. And he was like, no, I'm serious. I was like, okay, tell your wife cause I'm coming. And then I had to come home and tell my wife who you've met. And so I'm starting another podcast for free. And she was like, wait a minute. Anyways, and then Bootleg was born right before the pandemic started. Like I actually, when I flew back from Brett's house after we did that whiteboarding session a couple of weeks after Senior Bowl, I remember seeing a bunch of people in the airport with masks. And I was like, I should read up on this COVID thing. And then we all bunkered down and hung out in our basements. And I was like, well, we have a captive audience. What are we going to do about it? So we made a podcast and that's Bootleg. That's going on 4 years. This is going on 5 years. And that's how we got into all this.
The only thing I'll add to your history, from my perspective is one, we had met in person. You live in Washington State. I live in Iowa.
Yeah.
We had met in person before we launched the podcast. And you were kind enough to offer me. We've been writing together for years, and so we knew each other.
Yeah, but you were like, you and your wife were out here. You were, for people that don't know, JB's one of his life goals is to run a half marathon in all the 50 states, and he was earlier in that goal than he is now. He's actually really close to finishing now. But at the time, he was coming out and he was doing this West Coast swing to do I think it was Oregon, Washington, and Alaska or something. And he's like, yeah. And he was like, hey, I'm going to be in the neighborhood. And I was like, well, we definitely have to get together. Come on, have dinner, the whole bit. And then he was like, oh, well, we got a really early flight the next morning. So we don't want to buy a hotel. We're just going to sleep in our car. Like we're going to sleep in a rental car. And I was like, the hell you are. You're not coming to my neck of the woods and not, having a room. So got to meet you and your lovely wife. And that was fantastic. You got to sleep for all of 3 hours and then run off to the airport. But no, it was a good time.
And you bought some beers, including Ninkasi beer that I had. And again, I ran that day. I wasn't going to drink that much, but I believe I had 2 beers. That's pretty much my limit anyway. I have a 2-drink maximum for myself. And we were talking Bears, and we kind of went into this thing. And we had, I think, a bit of a disagreement about Matt Forte, and it kind of came down to Matt Forte. I think had left, where maybe we were talking about him leaving or whatever it was. Yeah. And I was like, if you're not going to be good, at least be entertaining. Keep your stars. And you were like, running backs are fungible. And we kind of had this conversation that went on, and we realized that we had just sort of went into this deep football conversation, and our wives looked at each other.
Everybody left.
Well, they kind of looked at each other, and we both realized sorry. And I believe your wife said, I'm just happy he has someone to talk to about it.
That's correct. That is 100% correct.
When we came back to this idea of a podcast, that was what we wanted to recreate. It's that having a beer, having a conversation about the Bears, and just talking. And people that are into that, come and join us and have some fun with it. So that was the idea. And I think that we've done that fairly well and somewhat consistently over the last 5 years. But before we move back to another question, let me say 5 years in, we are so much better now than we were 5 years ago. I'm not saying we're good now. I'm saying we're so much better than we were.
Well, you're a writer, so you know this. That was where I came to podcasting. I was a writer. I was a writer about other things before football, and then I started writing about football, and that's how I ended up on Woody City and the whole bit. But this as a writer, if you look at something that you wrote 9 months ago, it's grating. It's awful. You hate it. There are very few things I look back on that I wrote any time ago. More than just, I don't know, I don't know what the deadline is. I don't know what the expiration date is, but it's quick. Like if you look back at anything you wrote, you can see the kernels in it and you can go, yeah, okay, but it's like if you're a writer and continually improving on your process or a podcaster or YouTube video maker or anything else, and you look back at your early stuff, you're just like, oh, cringe. Like, oh man, like we've gotten so much better. 100%.
Yes. Yes. So that's that. And then I would just say very proud of you and what you've done on Bootleg, and it's really cool. And love everything that's happening there. And on my side of things, love the show that I'm building with Lester. And it's just really cool that the spaces that we create and the people that we interact with on this are great. I didn't necessarily plan that diversion, but again, it's the final episode. I've only got a couple questions, unless everybody in the comments has more. And this one I think is kind of quick because it's just more of a comment. Andrew Davis at at another A Davis says, wouldn't it just be amusing to trade the first overall pick just so we can continue to make periodic tweets about what Bryce Young cost the Panthers? Let's just keep this going through at least 2027. I do like that was a funny comment because I like the idea of this pyramid of picks that just keeps building.
It's just a ripple in a pond. It just keeps getting bigger and going farther out. Yeah. It is interesting, and especially with we all suffer as Bears fans. The Bears have not been really good in a long time, but like Panthers fans, I feel they are going through it right now. I'm just going to say it. They have the new Dan Snyder as their owner, and that is not a mantle as a fan you want anybody in your organization to pick up and run with. Tepper, by all accounts, not only on the football program, he also owns the soccer team in town, is just a bear to work for. Like, he is not a fun dude. Threw a drink at a fan, got fined whatever it was, $300,000, which is
$300,000.
Yeah, but let's 0.000567 of his income. Like, he's never going to feel it.
He's above, and that's the whole point. He threw a drink down at somebody.
Yeah,
he's in an owner's box. They can't come at him. Like,
no, it's just a terrible. So Panthers fans, on top of the football product on the field, which was wildly disappointing this year, they had much higher expectations. They had a very good defense, which didn't live up to expectations. They had a lot of talent on the offensive line that did not deliver, regressed, and then they, moved up for the number one pick, and their anointed quarterback of the future did not play well. Like, it is just boo, boo, and boo if you're a Carolina fan. Like, everybody just wants out of there right now. So I feel for the Carolina fans. I go on Carolina radio pretty often with John Ellis, who's at One Panther Place. Good dude. And we know how it is to be a good dude following a tough team and trying to keep it above board, trying to keep all those stories out there. Yeah, it is a funny comment. Like, let's just keep this butterfly effect going for the next 3 years.
Yeah, it'd be a lot of fun to track. I mean, I would enjoy making a spreadsheet or making a visual.
Because
if nothing else, that would be fun. Yeah. All right, I want to go to this one. Maybe we'll get another question in, but I think this will be a fun capper to the season. So we've talked movies, we've talked TV shows, but we haven't talked specifically about sports movies, which I think is kind of interesting. No, I really love watching the Rewatchables, listening to the Rewatchables podcast, Bill Simmons and that whole network. It's a really fun podcast series. What started with sports movies. And they were just doing it started with Heat, but then they did like a bunch
It started with Heat. That's a great place to start, honestly. If you're going to start with movies, start with Heat. Like, that's right.
Which has nothing to do with sports. But they then pivoted to like, hey, we're going to do all these sports movies. And then they're like, no, let's just go back. Like, we're just going to do pop culture. We're just going to do all these movies. So anyway, I like the idea of like, what are the sports movies that you kind of keep going back to? And I think that there are more good baseball movies than there are football movies in general, but like football's my sport. And so I do, I have watched a bunch of football movies regularly. So I'll let you start off. You don't have to go with 3. We can just kind of list whatever you're into, but what are your go-to sports movies or movies that you watch during a certain time of the year, or maybe like, that rule where you see it on TV.
I think that's a great rule is if you see it, you're in. So my list will be, different than a few others because it's not necessarily the greatest. It's the ones you resonate to the most. So I'll start with a hockey movie, Slapshot. Like if you haven't seen Slapshot, old school Paul Newman, minor league hockey. My dad played minor league hockey. There are so many tropes. I spent a lot of time working in Canada. There's so many tropes in that movie that just, tick off old memories that like if Slapshot's on, I'm watching it because it's a hilarious movie. And it's not that common. A lot of people I know haven't even seen it. It's more of a niche, and I love it even more because of that. You talked about baseball movies. There definitely are more baseball movies just per capita than anything else. Two of my favorites, Bull Durham. I'm going to go back to Bull Durham every time because it's classic. It's a complete quote fest. And Major League. I'm going to go back to Major League every time because it's freaking hilarious. The cast is amazing. They all went on to do other things. But like Major League is just funny. Like it is a funny movie. It's a comedy about baseball and it works. Like it hits. It was kind of kitschy at the time, and it's surprisingly most movies like that don't age well. Major League has. So those are just three right off the cuff. I'm with you that football movies are tougher. They don't, like, I saw there was a question about Draft Day and why is it the worst movie ever? Like,
yeah, I couldn't find that question, but yeah, this goes.
There are a lot of pieces about Draft Day. There are some fun pieces to poke holes at. There are pieces of that movie that are okay. Overall, it is a calamity. That almost makes it fun to watch in a kind of Rocky Horror Picture Show kind of way. Like you just can, all moan at the same moments and be like, what the world? But, it's an interesting movie to watch. And then it feels like football movies are more fringe football movies. I mean, you could argue that one of the Batman movies is a football movie because Bane blows up a stadium.
Oh yeah, I don't know about that.
It's a stretch, but like Last Boy Scout is a football movie. Well, kind of, but not really. It seems like you kind of have to go farther field and stretch for football movies than you do baseball movies.
I'm with you there. I'll give you some football movies that I think are good though. Bull Durham, Major League, I had down as baseball movies. I'm also going to add Moneyball.
Moneyball, great movie.
I love Moneyball, and I want to watch one of those at the start, like around opening day.
Sure.
I don't need to watch all of them, but I want to watch one of them around opening day. Now, I grew up a Cubs fan. I'm still at least somewhat of a Cubs fan. It's hard for me when they traded away all of the players.
No rookie of the year for you?
Well, no. I mean, I remember watching that in the theaters as a kid. So,
okay, there you go.
I do remember that. Like that was like the appropriate time for me to
see it and actually.
I'm pretty sure it was a double feature that we went to, and I think it was was it Last Action Hero?
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, someone's going to fact check me. Someone's going to fact check me on this, but I think that's the one. That's the Schwarzenegger one, right? Where he's
100%.
Yeah. I think it was a double feature with those two. And Number One Sports Fan took me and my best friend to that double feature. So I'm pretty sure
that's her
that I can remember it.
That's impressive.
She's number one mom. You know that.
Yeah,
all right.
For sure.
Football movies.
Yep.
Okay. Let's start with high school movies and go up. So
you're going by level of competition.
Well, I mean, you could start with Little Giants.
I was going to say, you're going to start with Little Giants.
You can start with Little Giants and Icebox, right? I mean, that's fun and good and all that. I have to mention Remember the Titans, and I know it's not historically accurate,
right? But you have to mention it because
it's good.
Say why.
Well, it's my mom's favorite movie.
There we are.
She's seen it 100 times. And because of that, I've probably seen it 30, right? But I think it's a good movie. I know it's not historically accurate. Denzel Washington. I'll watch anything with Denzel Washington in it. Let's start with that. He's sure. Awesome. And I think that they do there's some good music. There's some fun football scenes. I'm into it. Like some of the stuff's a little much. And then the actors in that movie, like there's some like actors that went on to do some things, right?
Yep.
So it's a cool movie if you like movies, because those guys were at the right time, and then they went on and did things. Other high school movie, and again, this hit me at the exact right moment.
Right.
I was like a senior in high school when this came out, but Varsity Blues,
Oh
like
yeah.
it's the perfect movie for being a high school senior and having a football movie come out. And I again, some fun football scenes, some great music, some great football music, right? There's a lot of stuff that we would listen to in the locker room before we go out and play. And some bad accents, but some fun movies. And again, one of those where you caught some people at the right time and they went on to do some fun stuff. College, The Program.
I was gonna say it's got to be The Program. If you didn't say The Program for a college movie, I was gonna question you.
I love that movie. Now, I don't know that it's a great movie, but I
It's
love
not,
that movie.
but
It's not.
universally, and I'll just say this: offensive linemen love that movie. You know who else loves that movie and it's like number one on their chart? Mike
Oh,
Golick Jr.
yeah. Well,
Like he loves The Program. And it's like, yep, it's a type. Like if it hit you at that time and you were sort of in that guild, The Program is it for
Cain is Abel. That's all I'll say. It's a fantastic movie in terms of a football movie that I will watch many, many times more in my life than I have already watched many, many times.
Sure.
And then this one apparently is controversial, but at the professional level movie for me is Any Given Sunday, and some
Yeah.
people really don't like it. And it's long and there's a lot going on, but I think it's got pretty good football scenes. I love the Jamie Foxx, Al Pacino dynamic of what's
Mhm.
going on there. I think those are both outstanding actors. There's a lot of other good stuff that's going on. I mean, Aaron Eckert's in that movie. Like there's some good stuff that's going on. There's it's a little overblown, right?
Yeah,
There's
if
some
you're a
parts
purist,
too
you
much.
will argue with that. If you're a football purist, if you're into movies as opposed to you're into football, it depends on what side of that you come from. If you're into cinema, you get it. You might not love it, but it is a thing. Like it is hard to mention pro football movies and not mention that
And they have unbelievable cameos. Nick
movie.
Buckus
Yes.
Nick Buckus has a cameo, Warren
Yeah.
Moon, Johnny
No,
Unitas. I mean,
they went yeah, they went down the list.
it's like 20, like, it's an insane number of Hall of Famers that
Yep.
made a cameo, and they're just, like, opposing coaches. They got, like, one line, I mean, it's nothing, but it's
Doesn't matter.
awesome. It's amazing. They went all out for it, and
Mhm.
so if you're a football nerd like me, like a guy that likes history and likes to go back, and you watch this movie and you see all of these people, right? I mean, Jim Brown has, like, a real
They
role.
even
Jim Brown was
they
an actor,
even went to the press. Like they had press that were top level
right?
football press in that movie. Like the guys in the press box are cameos.
So that to me, those are the football movies that I think of quickly. There's some other football movies that are fun, or some of the comedies that you enjoy or whatever. But those are the ones I think that are I have seen. I have seen all four of those movies more than 10 times each.
Oh, yeah, I think definitely all the ones I mentioned I've seen well north of that. And there are other fun ones outside and sportsman cover. Like I'll watch Tin Cup because again, I love the performances. It was sort of a moment in time and it's a cultural reference point of like you never want to go full Tin Cup. Like
Is the Big Lebowski a sports movie?
it is absolutely a
And
sports
we got
movie.
to mention the Big
And
Lebowski.
I have the like I don't know what anniversary. It's like came in a tin. Like I got
Yeah.
it used at half price books, but it was unopened and it was like the Big Lebowski, like whatever 20th anniversary in a tin because I was like, dude, it's a great film. And
Dude, you were like, dude.
dude, beverage here. Come on.
That's one of those, like, when you upgrade your DVD collection to the Blu-ray collection. Like, that's you know what I mean? Like, I don't have a
Yeah.
ton of Blu-rays. I had a ton of DVDs. That's what I spent
Yeah, I have a lot of DVDs. I have a few Blu-rays because when I upgraded my player, it was Blu-ray, and then Blu-rays got really cheap. Like
right.
everybody was like, "Oh, it's going digital." Blu-rays dropped down to like $5 and $8. And you can sort through the bins and find those films that you didn't have and be like, well, I might as well buy it on Blu-ray because it's the most current standard. So I started to accumulate those. But I have a whole sports movie section in the like DVD, Blu-ray thing that's, you know, it's got a bunch of baseball movies in it. It's got Tin Cup in it. It's got some movies that have to do with what I used to do, like Breaking Away, which is a cycling movie that a lot of people don't know about because it's really old. And again, it was super niche. And then it's got, you know, it's got your classics in it that, you know, it's got Caddyshack in it. Like Caddyshack, great sports movie. Gonna go back and watch it because it's hilarious.
Good point. Good point. That one didn't come to mind. I don't think of golf as a sport.
I don't really either anymore, but like Caddyshack, like if it's on, I'm going to watch it because, you know, you got the quotes about the llama.
I know he just said, so bowling. Okay. So my definition of a sport is that there's got to be a defense. So I suppose
really?
bowling doesn't necessarily qualify, but like for the purposes of this, I want Bill Globusky in, so we'll call it a sports movie.
Okay. Fair enough.
So anything,
I don't want to exclude it because especially with this podcast, it has beverages.
It has beverages, man. It's also like one of my favorite movies of all time. I mean, it's a top 10 all-time movie. So
it's a great movie.
All right, that's all I got, guys. That's the questions for the week. Do you want to close it on your final thesis of the 2023 Chicago Bears?
Ooh, 2023 Chicago Bears. I think you started that thesis at the beginning, which was, hey, chronologically, we were talking about the good and the bad. Well, actually, it's the bad and the good if you go chronologically. Like, this season started off on one of the biggest flops in recent Bears history. He got Green Bay week 1 coming to your place. They have a new quarterback starting. You have a quarterback that you want to ascend, and you, for lack of a better term, just punt. Like, you fall flat on your face. It is awful. And everybody has serious questions from moment one. Like, what the hell was that? Like, we came into this with all this promise. We have DJ Moore. We have an alpha. And this is going to be Fields' year. And no, like, it just starts on your face. And it continues to sort of grind your face into the pavement for the first month. Like, the defensive coordinator is fired, dismissed, disappears, whatever. Your head coach, who is defensively based, takes over. Your defense continues to suck. You're getting thrashed, and everybody's like, oh, is this a lost season? Like, holy hell, this is terrible. Like, it's bad off the field. It's terrible on the field. Like, this is rough. Enter Phil Snow, like, save half the team, starts playing well, plays for about 3 weeks, says, look, I need pass rush. They go out, get Montez Sweat. Fortunes start to turn. Like, literally, the Bears become a top 5 defense, not a top 5 rushing defense, which they were the whole year, but like a top 5 defense about 3 weeks after Phil Snow starts in week 6-ish. Montez Sweat comes on the scene, currently leads the NFL in sacks for 2 franchises. That's never happened before. Pretty damn cool. Jalen Johnson, contract kerfuffle in the middle of the season, quiets down, continues.
Both guys are Pro Bowlers.
Continues to play really good football. The only 2 Pro Bowlers on the Bears. And then, like, Justin hurts his thumb. And we get the whole Tyson Bagent thing in the middle, which is a sort of a wild distraction with oblong national narratives. I can't say that any other way. Like, people like get behind Tyson Bagent in a kind of let's go kid sort of a way when he's not delivering those results on the field. Great story, in some total, not great. And then in a sort of completely complicating turn, defense continues to be good. Justin comes back from his thumb injury and starts to show the progress that everybody wanted to see. Takes less sacks, throws more over the middle, stays more on time, basically takes less negative plays overall, racks up a couple of, divisional wins, and you're just sort of like, what? It's a bit of a head spinner as a season. I don't think there's one takeaway from the season. And there are positives. We talked about the rookie development as one. Really, the rookies from the last 2 years, the last 2 draft classes, developing very nicely. Nobody can argue with that. They've all played very well. Like if you're talking about a hit rate, it's well above draft average. Let's put it that way. So the base is really good. And then you end up with the number 1 overall pick, even though you weren't the worst team in the league, like not even close. And that's typically who gets the number 1 pick. You have the number 1 pick, let's just say artificially, because you traded with Carolina. And you're not that bad. Like you've got a bunch of good things going on. We haven't even talked about TJ Edwards or Edmonds. Like Edmonds started to play well at the end of the year. Edwards played well all year. Like you kind of got this, not mostly loaded defense, but like you've got a lot of building blocks on defense. DJ Moore somehow persevered and had a DJ Moore season yet again, just a credit to his talent. Cole Kmet, this is the mea culpa moment. Cole Kmet played better football this year. He started off awful, just like this team. Couldn't hit his blocking assignments, like was the Cole Kmet we knew. After about week 4 or 5, Cole Kmet played much better football. He improved as a football player and really, I would say, lived up to his draft status. And that's something that is very meaningful going forward. Like you don't necessarily have to go after a tight end. You've got Cole Kmet and he can work as a starting tight end in this league. And I'm probably the last person that you expected to say that, but I try and be objective about this. And he has improved as a football player. And if you've been paying attention, it's impossible to ignore. So here's a team with the number 1 overall pick, bunch of pieces on both offense and defense, big decisions in the offseason. I'm not going to undercut any of that, from coaching to the quarterback to like things that are incredibly meaningful to any NFL team. Poles has got to navigate a minefield here. He's got all the ammo in the world, but it is all fraught. Any of these decisions can throw the ship off course and sink it, but they can also make it, the most unsinkable battleship in the NFL if he plays it right. So it's going to be a land of extremes this offseason. I don't envy the position. I've met the man. He's going to have some sleepless nights. Like no way around that. He's got a lot of ammo, a lot of decisions. He's got to hit it. That's the way it is in the NFL. Like it's big risk, big consequence, the biggest gamble going. It's going to be interesting to watch. I can't necessarily say fun because some of it's going to be gut wrenching and not go the way I want it to. That's just the nature of being a Bears fan, but love bringing it to all of you every week. Love working with you, JB. It is the reason I keep doing this. This is why the bootleg guy shows up, which is funny because really started as a Windy City Gridiron guy. But it is meaningful. It's a lot of fun. Love the interaction. Some of our fans have supported us in ways that will never make headlines, but are really, really cool. Gotten to meet some of you in person. And those have been moving experiences too. So it's it's an interesting time. May we live in interesting times. That is our lot in life as Bears fans.
Bears were number 1 story of the offseason last offseason
and they're going to be again
for a lot of, kind of negative reasons, but there was a tough choice and they made it and it paid off in gold. And
handsomely.
that's I think, the number 1 story is the number 1 pick. And I think everything cascades off of that because I think you make different decisions based on having that pick. Maybe they don't, but my prediction is that they are going to use that pick on a quarterback and Bears fans are going to like that guy. That's my prediction. I don't know. I don't even know if that's what I want. I'm not saying what I want. I'm saying that's my prediction.
Yeah.
Because it's hard because I do believe in Justin Fields, the person,
Yeah.
and I believe in his talent and I want him to do well. And, I know people get confused, but like, well, why would you cheer for him if you go somewhere else? Well, you get invested in these players and,
sure.
You hope for the best for them. And I'm completely fine with if the Bears do trade him to cheer for Justin Fields down the line. That's just where I'm at. They make a different decision. I'm going to be pretty happy. This is one of the because let's build a team with young rookies and veterans around Justin Fields. Great.
There's the sort of capper to this is there's good ways to go every way.
Yeah, there's more good options than there has been in a long time.
There's good ways to go every way. You can pick a quarterback at 1. You can trade down and pick a quarterback at 2 if you think your guy's going to be there at 2, or you negotiate that. That would be amazing. The trade down to 3 and pick a quarterback, I'm not behind. But if you're picking a quarterback, you're trading Justin Fields. Let's be real about that. You're going to get something reasonable for him because he has shown an upturn. That's going to give you options in future years. Like, there's no one way to win here. If you keep Fields and load this team around him by trading pick 1 because you don't need a quarterback and you get a king's ransom for Caleb, great. Like, that's possible too. Like, there's no like, oh, that's the wrong answer. There are multiple right answers here. Again, that's the choice that polls and team president are going to have to make. It is not enviable, but there is no one way to crack this particular nut and say that's the only way the Bears can win. There are multiple ways the Bears can come out of this looking and smelling like a rose, whether it's this season or next season. Like, it is possible to set a really good foundation for a football team that's going to be good for the next 2 to 5 years. And that's what we all want as Bears fans. So let's hope they nail it. Like, if you're a Bears fan, you hope they nail it. That's what you care about in the end. Like, not how they do it, but just like make some good choices, get some good players in, win some games. Let's go.
And I'll say this, I did call my shot on Trubisky leaving. I named the destination. I said he was going to sign in Buffalo to back up Josh Allen. And I said exactly what his salary was going to be. It's one of my better calls in life. And so I'll call my shot here. I think that the Falcons are the right destination for Justin Fields. He's a local kid,
most popular for sure.
I think it just makes sense all the way around. And I think that Falcons fan base would be pretty happy with that trade. That's just where I'm at right now. Things can change, but that's just my prediction. So, okay, you're going to go in the film room. You're going to be available in bootleg, regularly. But this is the season finale of the show. So we'll try to get you back on Windy City Gridiron stuff, as the draft goes on. But this is where you pivot and really trying to dive into the draft, and obviously you got to cover the playoffs and all that kind of stuff too. But you're
little bit. We're easing off that this year. We went too hard on that last year to burn us out. So we'll throttle down a little bit. But yeah, we put out a way too early, only top 10. We didn't even do the first round. We just did top 10 mock draft. That video is, I think it's 57,000 views, which is
people love the draft.
Ridiculous to me. So we're prioritizing our efforts appropriately. Let's put it that
way. Everybody go out and watch that. And until the next time I see you guys, which is Monday, until the next time we get EJ back.
People are going to get mad if I don't say something nice about this. Because they always say, what about the drinks?
Oh, what about the drink? Yep, let's finish up.
I don't think we necessarily need a review on your fuzzy water, but
fizzy, not fuzzy.
Okay. Again, not common. You're not necessarily going to find it at every store you walk into. You're probably not going to want to pay for it. If you do, it's not cheap. It is lovely, but it is specific. If you don't like Irish as maybe your favorite and you are not into Tony Port, stay away. If you love both of those things like I do, okay, wow. It is a significant beverage that's going to be savored for sure.
Awesome. Good to hear. It's right in your wheelhouse. So I'm not.
Yep. Might have just been made just for me.
Yeah, that you're the demographic. So
yep, 100%.
All right, everybody. Thanks. Appreciate the time, and we'll see you soon. Bear down.